Welcome back to my channel. My name's Laura Watson, and in this video I'm going to show you how I paint a daffodil and keep it bright and vibrant and not muddy. The first tip I have for keeping your yellow flowers bright and vibrant is using a clean plate or palette and mixing fresh yellows straight from the tube so that you don't have any color contamination. I then use my main palette to mix up my greens as well as a shadow color, and the shadow color I use for yellow flowers is French ultramarine and light red. This creates a beautiful, watery, subtle mix of a neutral gray, and I use a technique called underpainting to create the vibrant, beautiful yellow flower. So basically what I do is I paint the shape and form of the flower, in this case it's a daffodil, with the gray only. Then I completely dry that, lift out any highlights as I'm doing here, and then I paint the yellow over top. Again, this has to be completely dry before you paint your yellow over top, and you want to make sure that you have nice transparent, vibrant yellow watercolors, and that you also still leave some of the white shining through, like using graded washes in my 3-step painting method. If you're interested in learning more about botanical painting and how I use my 3-step painting method, then click the link in the video description below. I have a free 1-hour class that you can sign up for to learn everything that I do for botanical painting in real time. Now back to our yellow daffodil, I'm just continuing to go around with my brushes, and I'm using some warm and cool yellows so that I create more depth, shape, and form. So you can see the reference photo here that there are definitely some brighter and darker yellow areas, and that's where I used my shadow, but also my warm and cool colors. Again, that's something that I go over in the full-length lesson that you can access in the video description. Now I'm moving on to the trumpet, and this is more of a reddish orange color, so I'm starting with the lighter part of the trumpet, so painting light to dark, and again, using some contour lines and also that shading that I put in the middle of the flower to replicate a trumpet. And this is something that can be tricky, but again, if you follow the correct steps in my process, then it's not that hard. I prefer to add all of my shadow to my yellow flowers before I add my yellow, but you can add more depth with darker yellows and also lifting out highlights as I am here. It's hard to get all the highlights in the perfect spot when you're painting with watercolors, especially with botanicals. That's why I like to use that chisel brush to lift out light and really perfect and refine the lighting. So now you can see I have a lot more yellow painted on, and now this is step 3 of my 3-step painting method. I've had my base layers added, my contour lines in, and now I'm adding more wet on dry paint to create even more depth and contrast. Contrast is the key for creating a beautiful, realistic looking watercolor flower. And then I also use a big brush to start adding contrast, and then I switch to a much smaller brush to add highly concentrated colors in certain areas without overpainting the rest of my flower. Now I'm starting on painting the stem and the leaves, and I'm using a bluey gray kind of green to match that daffodil stem, and I'm mapping in my first layers using wet on dry to get all of those base shapes in, and I'm even just sort of using first some sort of looser floral painting techniques with using the tip and the belly of my brush to create the shape of the leaf. We'll add more detail on step 2 and 3 of the painting process, but right now we're just getting those beautiful shapes in and trying to capture different angles of the leaves. I also like to make sure that I create contrast from the very beginning, so some of my leaves are going to be darker and some of them are going to be lighter, and I do this by fading out the pigment on my brush. I like to call this the dip dab method, as I paint the paint onto the paper, dip my brush into the water, dab it on my paper towel, and then continue with a lighter tone. I also want to make sure that before I move on to the next steps that each layer is dry every time. I've switched to my smaller brush, and now I'm adding in step 2 for the leaves, which are the veins on their parallel veined leaves. Any type of veining or contour lines really starts to bring things to life with your botanical painting. I like to do this on the second step because when you sandwich it in the middle of the base layer and then the final layers that add more contrast, your painting looks more realistic and the lines don't look too harsh. Daffodils are the birth flower for March, and this painting is part of my 12 months of birth flower series where I painted the birth flower for each month of the year and made a full-length class on it. If you'd like to try out one of these classes, you can learn how to paint a wild rose for free in real time via the link in the video description below. My goal with my teaching is to try and simplify botanical art for people so that it's less scary and more enjoyable. I hope that this video inspired you and that you can apply some of these tips and techniques to your own paintings. Here's the finished painting. I hope you enjoyed this video and you're inspired to try some of these tips and techniques in your own paintings. Please subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this.